Hi guys, it's Kim, aka Spartan Stitcher on Instagram, back again with another cross-stitching update. This is Flosstube number 56, and today is the 17th of February, 2020. It is President's Day, which means my girls don't have school, so they are hopefully keeping themselves entertained in a not dangerous or messy way while I make this video. And since it's President's Day, how fitting is it that my Air Force story will be about one of our former presidents. So that will be at the end, so that if you're just interested in cross stitch, you can get that done first. So what did I work on this week in stitching? 2 full coverage pieces and 1 new start that I told you about. So I showed you last week my page finish on Friends Forever by Ann Stokes, and I told you that I still needed about 3,700 more stitches, 10 stitches to finish up my park, and I did that all in black, massive sections of black. So not very exciting to look at. Let me get my park thread out of the way. There you go. So exciting, isn't it? 3,700 stitches in black. The end of the page is right about there where that is. So I went down a little ways to finish up lengths of floss that I had. And something I did different on this page I didn't talk about last week. I normally grid both ways, and my whole thing in the past has been, it doesn't matter if you don't have to go in a specific pattern, 8 up, 2 down, 8 up, 2 down, as you take your gridding through the fabric. It'll make 10 by 10 blocks either way. As long as you're 10 stitches away, it doesn't matter how often you go up and down, it'll still make a block, and it's faster that way. Well, I know it'll probably wash out, and I try not to stitch over the gridding. I try to always stitch under the gridding, so when I pull the gridding out, my stitches aren't loose at all. But I've noticed in previous pages that, even before washing, you can still see lines from my horizontal grid. Not so much vertical, just the horizontal. I don't know if that's because I tend to, like as I follow a color across the page, I'll go back and forth. I don't know if there's a tension thing or whatever, but I decided to try my gridding a little bit differently on this next page. Let me do this so it's easier to hold. And this time I did pay attention to my up and down, because I only gridded the vertical, and I did 8 up and 2 down, so that where the gridding goes under, that's where my horizontal line is. I'm gonna try it with this page with the, it's got the skinny partial over here. See if I can deal with, just half the gridding that way, and see if it eliminates, not having those horizontal lines that you can see. Like you can see one, let me focus right here. You can kind of see how there was grid line right here. I don't know how well you can see it, but like right here you can see it, and right there. Again, I'm assuming a lot of this will wash out as the threads relax, once I finish the whole piece in years from now. But I decided, hey, it's something I can try. So I only did half the gridding and did a specific pattern, 8 up and 2 down, so I could mark where those horizontal lines would be if I had actually put them in. So this one goes away for a while. So that was my Death Valley Park for Full Coverage Fanatics National Parks Challenge, which means I have another sticker in my little passport. So there we go. I've got 3 parks done. 2 more still underway, with 2 other whips. So that was Friends Forever. And then there's one of the days where I meant to plug in my tablet to charge when I went to bed that night, and I forgot. And obviously I couldn't work on them. I didn't have enough power to work on it on another day without charging it first. So plugged it in. I said, I guess that's a sign for me to start this commission piece where it's Zoo Animals by the Trilogy, and I am altering it to make it all safari animals for a baby's room, where it'll say either the baby's name or safari something or other here. And I was also using this for, in the School of Magical Stitches and Literature, one of the group events was Toy Story Land. So I was using my stitches on this for Toy Story Land. All my other stitches were going towards Cinderella Castle. And Wilderness Lodge, my hotel, as of late last night, early this morning, we actually finished the 400,000 stitches needed for Cinderella's Castle. So the only group event we have going on right now is Toy Story Land, and we're over halfway done with that. So I'm not going to take this out of the Q-Snap. You won't be able to see every little bit, but I've got a pretty good start on it. I've got about almost half the animals done. If I had done this part of the giraffe's neck, I would have had half the animals. But fun little piece to stitch up. This is on 28 count linen. I don't know. It's natural-ish looking linen. So this has been fun so far. And I'm going to do the giraffe next. Probably go down and do the crocodiles to get over to where the zebra is. And then the last thing I'll do, I'm taking out these three and I'm going to replace them with safari animals. So I'll do those, and then whatever words we decide on. So the baby isn't due until like the 3rd week of July. So I have plenty of time. I've got, like I said, I've got this almost halfway done, but it's a fun little piece to get some variety between full coverage, or whether it's a day or part of a day, just to work on this a little bit. So that was the second piece I worked on. Third piece I worked on was for this weekend, for Love Is All You Need weekend in Full Coverage Fanatics. I decided to work on my Supersized Color Expansion Museum Shelf, and I am down here in Dinosaur Corner, and I got a page finish. So let me hold you up closer here so you can see the dinosaurs. Focus here on the Triceratops skull. Remember, I'm cropping out this outer gold border, the frame, if you will. I figure if and when I ever finish this piece and I actually get it framed, I don't need a stitch frame inside a real frame. So I'm saving myself a lot of time by not stitching that frame. So Dinosaur Corner, you have the Triceratops skull, an orangish book with this other predatory dinosaur, and I got my page finish. So so far I have this one going for Carlsbad Caverns, and I've got 4,500 tent stitches, and I need 8,000, so I still need 3,500 more stitches to finish up the park on this one, and I'm gonna keep working on it. Dude, look at that. I can't tell you how happy I am with the detail on this piece. I've never seen anyone working on the Supersized Color Expansion version of this chart. So it's one of those, like, you never know what you're going to get. I've seen the regular version, I've seen regular max colors and supersized max colors in different corners of the chart. But I'm so happy with how this guy has turned out. Yes, there were quite a few colors that only had one stitch in this page. So it's a skinny page. You can see my mark right here. So that's your page because of the bit that I cropped out of the frame. So let's see, that's 80, 70, 60, 50, 40, 30. So it's a little over 50 stitches wide. But I am super pleased with that. Can't wait to get more done. So I'm going to continue on this page here. I'm going to stitch all the black. You know, I've feathered it quite a ways. But I'm going to stitch all the black and then keep building on it until I get those 3,500 stitches to finish up the park. And again, to bring this into perspective as to how big this thing is, the whole frame is 48 inches wide. So, but I'm so happy with how that looks. Very, very happy to have this piece as a whip. It's one of my favorites. Now I'll put it there so you can look at it sideways. So those are the 3 pieces I worked on this week. Something I received in the mail last week that I forgot to talk about. One of my subscribers and also a member of Full Coverage Fanatics sent me a message. I didn't ask if I could say her name, but she knows who she is. She sent me a message to ask what's the best way to sell a quantum frame. She had bought it to work with her full coverage pieces, but just didn't really like it. She likes her Q-snaps, and she told me the size of it, and I'm like, what are you asking for? So I ended up buying it from her because I could always use another frame, and she lived in the United States, so I got it in less than a week. So it happens to be, I thought it was slightly smaller than my frame, my quantum frame that I used on Trick or Treat, but it happens to be the exact same size. So now I have 2 quantum frames that are 80 centimeters by 15, which it didn't hurt me. I got lots of big pieces. And I was looking at all my whips, trying to figure out the best piece to put on it. I like to have the pieces with easy count fabric on scroll type frames so that I don't have to fold them, because it is a stiffer fabric than regular Lugana like Friends Forever is on. That one I can fold up and wrap around a Q-snap a lot easier. But the easy count is stiffer, and so I like to put those on scroll type frames or larger Q-snaps. And so I ended up putting Kindred Spirits on this one. It's slightly not really skinnier, but it's not as big. Kindred Spirits is 450 wide, and in comparison, Friends Forever is 400 wide. Beauty and the Beast is 350. Star Wars and Half-Blood Prince, one's 325, one's 375. So it made sense. Kindred Spirits was my widest that I didn't already have on a frame. So I put Kindred Spirits on there. You can't really see much because I told you the next page I'm doing is down here. So I have it all wound up. You can see my back because I don't have a scroll frame grime guard for it yet. But so this is all ready for me to start the next page. So thank you to the person that I bought this from. I appreciate it. And so that was my my haul, I guess, for the week. My mom sent me a text message the other day, and she said that I inspired her. She actually, I think she still watches my videos. She's also follows me on Instagram. She said I inspired her to work on more than one piece at a time with her knitting. She used to crochet, but can't really crochet anymore because of arthritis in her hand. It's not so much this action as you know, bringing your thumb around that she can't do while holding like a piece of crochet work in your hand. And so she knits still, but she also uses those looms that you can put on your lap and knit that way with a loom and a little hook. So she's got 3 different projects going right now on her looms, and I asked her if that really helps, and she said it does because she's using the looms with a different stitch on each of them. So it's a different action with her hands, and it helps, you know, give her hands a break from one action to move to another. So multiple whips really does help, whether it's motivation or physical challenges. I did go to the chiropractor this morning, yesterday or last week I went on Tuesday. She was really happy with how I was doing and told me I did not have to go a second time last week. So we set the appointment for this morning. And after the adjustment on Tuesday last week, I had a couple days soreness because of what she did to me. But after that, I was pain-free the whole rest of the week. I'm still pain-free. I'll probably be sore again tomorrow, maybe a little bit on Wednesday. Because one of the things besides the adjustment that she did is she used like a fascia scraping tool. So your fascia in your muscles, and you've probably heard or seen runners doing it on their legs to break up lactic acid and stuff in their leg muscles. It was like a metallic tool, and she just kept rubbing it like a deep tissue massage almost. So it's not the most comfortable thing in the world. Over my neck and around my shoulder. And it does make you sore for a few days. I do need to ice it to kind of help. But then, like I said, I've been pain-free almost the entire week. She said I should keep doing stretches for another week or two, and then come in as needed. Like in a month, we can check up, or if I start having issues again, I can make an appointment. So that's an update on that. Now, the rest of the video will be kind of Air Force national history related. So if you're not interested, I'll see you next week. And here we go. So last week I told you about President Reagan's funeral flyover that we did at Seymour Johnson, and this week we're going to talk about President Ford. It means more to me because he was a Michigan guy, and since I know not all my viewers are Americans, we'll do a little bit of history just to give you a background as to what happened with his funeral. So President Ford was born in Omaha, Nebraska, but was raised in Grand Rapids, Michigan. So you got the state of Michigan. Grand Rapids is over here. So Detroit, East Lansing, Ann Arbor is down here somewhere with University of Michigan. So born in Nebraska, raised in Grand Rapids, Michigan. He went to the University of Michigan for his bachelor's degree, and he played football for them as a center for 2 years. And then after he graduated, he went to Yale Law School. And then after the attack on Pearl Harbor in December 7th, I know my history. Was that 1941, right? He enlisted in the Navy and was in the Navy from 1942 to 1946. After that, he returned to Michigan, and 3 years later was elected congressman for the 5th District of Michigan, which is around Grand Rapids, and was a congressman in the House of Representatives from 1949 to 1973. In December 1973, Spiro Agnew, the vice president for President Nixon, was replaced, and was replaced with Gerald Ford. So here we have a vice president that was never elected, filling the office of vice president. And then, of course, Nixon resigned. So Ford became president and was never elected. He's the only man to have been vice president and president without ever having been elected. And he ran for re-election, but lost against Jimmy Carter. So that was his life in a nutshell. In 2006, he was 93 years old, living in California, and he died on the day after Christmas, 2006. Now, my husband and I, we happened to be in Michigan at the time this happened because, both stationed down in North Carolina with no family down there. We take leave over the Christmas holidays because there's minimum manning at that point. There's no flying going on. We drive the 12 hours up to Michigan. We'd see my family. He has family in Michigan. And at the time, his mom was also living in Grand Rapids. So we'd we'd make the tour. We'd drive up from North Carolina. He had some family in the Detroit area. We'd see my family in Saginaw, and we'd see his mom in Grand Rapids. So we'd do this and then drive back down to North Carolina. Because when you're young, a 12-hour drive is nothing. So we were in Michigan when we heard on the news that President Ford had passed away. And we were just about to drive back to North Carolina anyways. So when we got back to Seymour, preparations were already underway for the flyover. Again, the plan had already been set. We knew that we were on tap for the flyover. In reflection now, I don't know why, since he was a Navy man, I don't know why the Navy didn't do his flyover, just like they did for President George H.W. Bush. But the Navy did have certain roles in President Ford's funeral services, just not the flyover. They played taps. They had a Navy sailor holding the presidential flag. They played I forgot what, they whistled them on, how they normally do when a commander boards a ship. So they did have other roles, but the flyover was still up to Seymour Johnson. And because my mother-in-law lived in Grand Rapids, I do have some mementos, if you will. So first, this little card was just a picture of President Ford sitting in the Oval Office. And on the back, just a summary of his education and service. Excuse me. And a thank you from his family. And then the other thing that I have from Grand Rapids is this commemorative issue of the Grand Rapids Press. It's something like, there's 4 sections of this newspaper. Just everything in it is stories that were published in the Grand Rapids Press between the time of his death through a day or two after the funeral. So lots of different interest stories and things that he's accomplished in his life, things about the funeral, stuff like that. So I have that as a memento as well. All right, so here's how it happened for the funeral services. First, he laid in state for a few days in California, and then again he flew on Air Force One airplane to the Capitol building. There was a state funeral service on the 30th of December. He did not go on a horse-drawn caisson. The Ford family wanted things to be low-key and less work. So all his transportation was in a hearse. So he was driven around Alexandria because that's where he lived when he was in the House of Representatives. They also drove past the World War II Memorial because of his service in the Navy during World War II. There was a funeral service on the 2nd of January at the National Cathedral in Washington. And after that service, he was transported again via Air Force One to Grand Rapids, Michigan. And they also did a low altitude flyover on the way of the University of Michigan. So on the 3rd of January, once he arrived in Grand Rapids on the 2nd of January, he was transported to his presidential museum, which is in Grand Rapids, of course. And then on the 3rd of January, he was transported from the museum to the church for a service. And then back to the museum, because next to the museum is the hillside tomb where he was going to rest. So, as I told you last week, for President Reagan's flyover, the flyover was before the service. Well, in this case, for President Ford, the flyover was after the service. It was as the sun was setting, as he as he arrived at the hillside tomb after the service. Again, around 40 airplanes were started, plus 4 KC-135s to help refueling, And what they do is they left Seymour about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And so that's a lot of flying time if you think 1 o'clock in the afternoon, but the flyover wasn't until sunset in Michigan. And they're both in the same time zone. So, you know, those tankers were necessary for 32 airplanes. Is actually one, I know it was 30 for President Reagan, but that was only to Washington, D.C. So 32 airplanes went up to Michigan for President Ford with the 4 KC-135 refuelers. And they're just circling, just waiting for the moment where they're supposed to do the flyover. Because it was after the service ran longer than was expected. Our jets were within 3 minutes of having to cancel the flyover because they were that low on gas. That's just, it baffles my mind. They had burned that much gas that they had, you know, carried in their own airplanes and on the refuelers. They were within 3 minutes of saying, okay, we can't do it. We don't have enough gas, because not only do they have to fly over, they have to make it to wherever they're going to land, and which happened to be the case. Out of those 32 airplanes, 11 of them spent the night at Selfridge Air National Guard Base in Michigan. They didn't have enough gas to get back to North Carolina. So Grand Rapids is over here. Selfridge is back on this side of the state, but much shorter distance to fly here than to fly all the way back to North Carolina. So 11 of those 32 spent the night in Selfridge before flying back to Seymour Johnson the very next day. Okay, time for pictures and video. So here is the, nose art for, we had this on at least 2 different airplanes. Again, like I told you, he was a center for the U of M football team. So, hail to the victors valiant. Excuse me. And I got these pictures out of order. This is kind of cool. One of the billboards that was up in Grand Rapids, Gerald Auer Ford, because he was a congressman for them for almost 25 years. Okay, so here's the air crew in one of the nose art jets getting ready to go. They're in the cockpit getting strapped in, getting all their pre-flights done. And here we have engines are running. I can tell that because this is no longer level, it's actually pointed down. So you have one crew chief here waiting to marshal them, and the other crew chief is here waiting to pull the chocks so that they can taxi. So that's a little glimpse of what Seymour Johnson aircraft ramp looks like. And here's one of the airplanes taking off. You can see he's in afterburner as I keep touching the screen. So unlike for President Reagan, we had beautiful weather. Even though this was January, you can see, what was that, crew chief was in short sleeves? No, not short sleeves, but no jackets either. Okay, so I have here's a picture of the missing man formation. I do have a video to show you too, so you can see how this happens. So again, 21 jets. You have one jet leading 5 waves of 4, and you will see that in this video. And the last wave is the one that does the missing man formation. This video is 1.5 minutes long. There we go. You can see the single jet leading the other waves. Lots of insects at sunset. Watch jet number 3. Full afterburner straight up. So that is a video of the actual flyover. If that doesn't give you chills, I don't care what side of the politics you're in. Here's a man that served the country, both in the armed forces and in politics. So that's your President's Day Air Force story. I hope everyone has a good week, and I will talk to you guys next week. Bye.